Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, I'm Bob from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, as a family-owned company, our goal has been simple: to give our neighbors of the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick out the perfect appliances. We'll take care of everything throughout the sale, delivery, and installation process. And we even have our own in-house service department. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
I'm going to open the meeting of Monday, July 11th, 2022. It is now 6 o'clock, and this is the Falmouth Select Board open meeting. And I will consider a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, AFSCME Unit C, MGL 30A, 21A2 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, AFSCME Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, COVID premium pay, and MGL 30A to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager, and I do so declare as chair not to go into executive session would be detrimental to negotiations.
Second.
What, Madam Chair, would it be appropriate to put in that motion the possibility of the assistant town manager coming in to the end of that? Is that what?
That will be an executive session.
Oh.
That motion will be made.
I would so move.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor by roll call?
Brown, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Okay, and we will return to open session at 7 o'clock. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Falmouth Select Board to order. It is Monday, July 11th at 2022. It is 7 o'clock. The Select Board is just returning from executive session deliberations, and I would ask Acting Town Manager Peter Johnson-Staub to report out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In executive session today, the Select Board ratified an agreement with the dispatchers that's represented by AFSCME Unit C. This is a 3-year collective bargaining agreement which includes the same 2% COLAs received by other unions and also includes a market adjustment to make our salaries more competitive.
Thank you. And I also have a statement to make regarding executive session deliberations. The Select Board has fastidiously adhered to the requirements of the Charter in adopting the resolution to initiate proceedings to remove the town manager and all actions specified in the Charter, including a public hearing where the town manager had unlimited scope to respond to the Select Board's concerns and failed to do so. The Select Board has diligently considered many approaches to resolve the issues relating to the town manager's termination, including many good faith offers of settlement in order to spare the town the cost of litigation, potential liability, and administrative problems at Town Hall. The acting town manager, along with town council, have conducted an independent analysis of the contractual liability to the town for the funds due to the town manager at his termination date and have processed a payment that will be delivered to the town manager tomorrow. The Select Board deferred to the acting town manager and town council to determine these calculations. The Select Board has voted unanimously to authorize Special Counsel Robert Troy to make a final offer of settlement to the town manager. Because of the concerns related to threatened litigation, the Select Board members will have no further comment about these proceedings. Any inquiries should be directed to our special counsel. Thank you. I'd ask you to all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would ask, please, that everyone silence any cell phones, and please alert the chair if you are personally recording this meeting. Thank you. Okay, proclamations. Mr. Patterson, would you like to do the honors?
Pleasure. And I might say that I've already attended the Eagle Court of Honor for the first Eagle Scout on your behalf. And I just read this as a draft, so now we can officially make this proclamation. Whereas Dominic Bowen of Boy Scout Troop 38 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork, and requires strong goal setting. And whereas Dominic Bowen met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his family, his troop, and Falmouth. And whereas the Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for a special court of honor to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank. And whereas Dominic Bowen is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privilege, now therefore we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Scott Zielinski, as the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth, do hereby and proclaim Dominic Bowen as an Eagle Scout throughout Falmouth, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed on this 11th day of July 2022.
Second.
Congratulations, Dominic.
Is Dominic here?
Yes, he is.
Would you please come up to the podium?
Shall we vote that proclamation?
Oh, certainly. I'm sorry. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Dominic.
Should I just put this right here, or is that okay to, okay. So, a little nervous. So,
Don't be nervous.
Yeah,
It's all good. It's all good.
my Eagle project, it was a bit of a while ago, but I still remember it like pretty vividly, just because with the Falmouth Service Center, I mean, they're like a huge staple of this community. They've helped out a lot. I mean, I've been participating in the food drives they've done every Thanksgiving since, I want to say since I was a Cub Scout. And even a couple summers ago, I've helped out at the Hand in Hand thrift shop. And I still have, friends who go there and drag me along, and then I see people there and like, hey, Dominic, I'm like, hey. So this project was like me wanting to give back to them for all that they've done for the community. And it was actually quite a bit of a challenge trying to figure out what we wanted to do for the Eagle Project, because there's a lot that the Falmouth Service Center does, and there's a lot that they have. But when I finally was able to work out with the clients there, the front picnic area of, I believe, the Service Center, I was like, all right, awesome. That's my project. So then I show up there, I'm like, oh, no. Because it was, I think I didn't realize quite how much work there was to do, but, I wasn't about to go back and tell them, not for me. So what needed to be done was that there was the walkway, the brick walkway that went through the whole picnic area, and the problem was that it's about 30 feet long, and yet it was absolutely overgrown with weeds, and there was brush that was just spilling into it, and there was dips and bumps because it wasn't perfectly level. So for the project, we had to have scouts actually dig up the bricks and then fill in the spots with sand and level it out. And even when the Pete's had come, like, all right, guys, you can take a break. Like, no, we got to level it. We got to make sure it's level. And then there was the garden, which was totally overgrown, and we had to have scouts on ladders with weed whackers to be able to trim those bushes because they were way too high. To put that into perspective of just how much this picnic area needed some care. And then there was the picnic tables, which I needed to, me and my mom, we had to go there one day before the project and scrub off the lichen for all those picnic tables because they had seen much better days before. And even though there was a whole lot going on, a lot of scouts actually showed up for this project. It was almost like a bit overwhelming because I had never really done anything to this scale before, and I didn't know how well it was going to work. I was actually very pleased to see just how well everyone worked together as a team, and I think that wouldn't have been quite as possible if it wasn't for the fact that I, as an Eagle Scout, well, upcoming Eagle Scout, needed to be able to manage them and make sure that I had enough of a hands-off approach where I wasn't doing the jobs for them, but still was able to guide them enough so they knew what they were doing. Because I couldn't just sit back and be like, you guys got it. I needed to be able to make sure that, I had been to this place so many times and memorized the entire layout of the area, and I had all the tools available. I needed to make sure that the scouts who were volunteering were also able to do what I had envisioned. And I was very pleased to see with just how well everyone was able to work together and be able to do that. And it looks way nicer now. I'm really impressed with just the hard work that everybody put in. That's pretty much that, yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Well done. Congratulations.
May I say that really is the goal of the Boy Scouts, is to grow this kind of leadership. And when you see an example like Dominic, it just really warms your heart, having been involved in scouting for such a long time, both as a youth and then as an adult leader as well. I want to recognize Dominic's mother, who's sitting back there on the back row. So you've obviously raised a phenomenal young man. And we really appreciate it and the contribution that he's made to this town. So.
An excellent public speaker, and that can be hard. Well done.
We have a second proclamation.
We do.
Okay, then I'll be happy to read that one too. Whereas Rigel Laundre of Boy Scout Troop 38 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork, and requires strong goal setting. And whereas Rigel Laundre met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his family, his troop, and of Falmouth. And whereas the Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for a special court of honor to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank. And whereas Rigel Laundre is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privilege, now therefore we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Scott Zielinski, as the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth, do hereby declare and proclaim Rigel Laundre as an Eagle Scout in Falmouth, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hand, and caused the great seal of the Town of Falmouth to be affixed on this 11th day of July, 2022. Congratulations, Rigel. And
I'll second that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Come on up.
Well, for my project, I knew I wanted to do something conservation related and help out with like either wildlife or like invasive species or something along those lines. Because I don't know, I like nature, and so that was kind of where that came from. So I reached out to the 300 committee. Actually, this is kind of a funny story, but I used my old email from when I was younger, and instead of my like actual R. Landra email, because I don't know, I wasn't thinking that day, but that email happened to be R. Cool Frogs. So when that went to the 300 committee, Alex, who was the one who helped, she was the one I talked to and explained, okay, this is what we want to do. What would you guys interested in doing? And she's the one I talked to at the 300 committee. But she saw the email coming from Our Cool Frogs. She was like, oh, this is a great kid. He's perfect for this project that I want to get done. So what I ended up doing was there was this old rusty chain link fence in Teaticket Park, and we took that out, and we also put in a new fence that was not as harmful for the environment, because with the old chain link fence, it made it really hard for amphibians and hence the frogs and everything else in the wetland right next to Teaticket Park to get from the park to the wetland and vice versa. So what we did was we took out that chain link fence, and then we put in a new one that basically was just, there was a post and then a beam across top like that. And so it served as more of a, hey, please don't go in the wetland, and less of a, no, nothing can come from the wetland to the park or either way. And we also put in some birdhouses too, because, I don't know, I like birds. Birds are nice. And
That's excellent.
Yeah, thank you
they
so
were
much.
looking to put in
That is
birdhouses.
wonderful.
But, yeah.
Congratulations.
Good ideas.
Really well done.
Very well done.
Thank you very much, guys.
Another excellent public speaker.
Yes. That's a real skill. Okay, recognition. Any recognitions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to recognize all the town employees who received recognition earlier today at the Appreciation Day. All of the people who have served for either 5, 10, 15, 20, or more years.
40 even?
Exactly. In town, it was a nice event to be able to recognize those employees, and I'd like to make a recognition again.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also thank you to the acting town manager for putting that together and taking the time to do that. I think it's really important. So thank you.
Just want to point out a lot of the legwork, all of the legwork, in fact, was done by the personnel office. So credit to them.
Of course. Thank
We will
you.
recognize them as well.
Okay, any other recognitions from the board?
Well, we did get notification of the passing of Walter Bennett, who was a firefighter. So condolences to his family. I know his son Chris has worked for the town for quite a lot of projects as a project supervisor. So our condolences to them today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for calling that out. Announcements.
We did.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to pass along the one from Alan Robinson about the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, that they're going to be hosting an event on July 21st at 7 p.m. in the Herman Room, just to give people information about the rollout of the recycling bins, and also information about the whole recycling program if anyone has questions. So July 21st at 7 p.m. And also his note advised us that the bins will start arriving on July 18th and be delivered through August. So it'll take a while as they go around the neighborhoods.
For coming. Thank you. That was on my list as well.
Okay.
Announcements, Mr. Patterson?
Just one more recognition. I actually participated as a member of the Rotary Club of Falmouth in the Day of Play on Saturday. And some 750 children actually came and participated in various activities. I ran the rain gutter regatta activity, and the kids just had a blast. And some of the scouts from Troop 38, some of their fellow scout members were there to help out. So I just wanted to give recognition to all the people that actually helped make that happen, because it was quite an event. It was held on the library lawn, and the kids had a fabulous time, and that couldn't have made us feel any better.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I wanted to offer another update with regard to the curbside collection of trash and recycling. So there was as the board is well aware, there was a transition from Republic Waste to a new operator, and they're branding locally as Nauset Disposal. However, they're part of a larger company, Waste Connections, which has a much larger presence in the region and in the country. So that change in operators took place on July 1st, and unfortunately, Republic Waste really fell pretty far behind in that, the last couple of weeks leading up to that transition, which made the work much more difficult for Nauset Disposal in their first couple of weeks. We continue to have some reports of missed neighborhoods, and Nauset has said it may take them another week or two to get fully caught up. We are obviously communicating with them very closely. The new numbers we do ask for folks to contact Nauset Disposal directly. The phone number and the email address are on the website, and we will be continuing to monitor their performance closely and taking all reasonable action that we can to make sure that we get caught up and get this issue put behind us.
Thank you.
Just add
Yes.
a data point, because I actually talked to the Nauset Disposal this afternoon relative to my community, which hasn't had any pickup in more than 3 days. So they said they're going to come by tomorrow, so that'll be 4 days. And I said, well, you realize you normally pick up on Wednesday, which is just going to be the very next day. But that's where we are in some neighborhoods. Now, I understand that there are other neighborhoods in town where the pickup was pretty much on schedule, but they clearly were not providing the same services across the town uniformly. And there are some of us with a trash can sitting out in our yards still, and they're going to be there through tonight as well. So maybe they'll be able to catch up tomorrow and collect them, but if not, I think probably we need to look at the DPW offering some kind of an opportunity for us to drop our garbage off, so it can be, because they're beginning to smell pretty bad.
I would say it's really just hit or miss. It's not just the back roads. I'm right on Old Main Road, and they missed us last week, the whole week completely, and they finally came on the regular day, the Friday. And then this past week with the holiday, they weren't coming Friday, but I expected them Saturday, but they did show up today. Or,
Oh,
so
good.
it's not too bad, but they missed a whole week over there.
Okay, any other announcements? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in discussion of the topic. It is not appropriate to use public comment period to comment on any person's reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, disciplinary matters, or civil or criminal charges. Comments about job performance and decisions made are permissible. The Select Board will not engage in any conversation or deliberation on any public comments made. Yes.
I will use my teacher voice. Barbara Schneider, Precinct 4 and Acting Chair of the Beach Committee. On Saturday, I had an opportunity to observe a call made after hours at one of our beaches. And the police, I just want to commend the police for what I watched that evening. There was a very touchy and difficult situation that they needed to handle. It required a lot of education that they have obviously had on different types of special needs, family issues, and so on. And besides the fact that there was some injury involved, there was a lot also to deal with. And I watched police deal with this so compassionately and so patiently and so effectively that I just wanted to give a shout out and say they really know what they're doing, and we're very lucky to have such a well-trained force, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Schneider. Yes, Mr. Doobie?
This pertains to an email that I received back when I asked for verification for the sale of the AR-15s to law enforcement. And Peter got back to me right away and said the purchase of weapons by individuals employed by the Falmouth Police Department is a personal transaction, and due to privacy and Second Amendment constraints, the town is not going to seek information. Went on from there. What you see in front of you is one of approximately 1 million records that we maintain in our database. That shows every retail sale of a firearm in the state of Massachusetts. We have other databases concerning other topics, but what you see there are 2 transactions for AR-15s last year from Powderhorn. Now, as you see, it shows the serial number, the date of the transaction, who sold it, where the dealer was located, and the type of weapon it was. That's all that we're looking for as far as town manager is concerned. We're not looking for personal information. I am certain that we have the serial numbers of the 21 weapons that have been sold. So all we're saying is that those serial numbers, which eventually will appear in our database if they're sold within the state of Massachusetts, that those serial numbers be tracked. In essence, if you went to Powderhorn and said, did you sell our 21 to law enforcement officers in the state of Massachusetts, they will show up on this database. So we're not asking for personal information. We're simply asking for Powderhorn to confirm that all weapons have been sold to law enforcement. If 21 AR-15s show up as having been sold, the next time we update our database, we'll know that law enforcement, because they're only legally sold to law enforcement, in the state of Massachusetts obtained all 21 of these firearms. Otherwise, we have no way of knowing that. They could be sold to law enforcement in other states, but Sergeant Guthrie and Chief Dunn testified before you that they had at least 21 orders from the Falmouth Police Department for these weapons. So they should technically, well, not technically, but in the presentation to you, they should have been sold to Falmouth Police Department officers. That's all we're asking is, I believe Member Scott Price asked at the time that you folks passed this how you were going to enforce the fact that they went to law enforcement, and Mr. Brown suggested that town manager be the one to enforce that regulation. That's all we're asking for is that information, no personal information at all.
Thank you.
Okay, wait, I have one other thing, really quickly.
Yeah, you're over your 2 minutes, quickly.
I realize that, that's why I'm going to do it fast. Upper Cape Women's Coalition Rally Coordinator Gail Manna contacted the Falmouth Police Department to let them know that as soon as the Supreme Court issued their decision on Roe v. Wade, there'd be a rally held on the Green. She called on June 24th and explained that they had a rally planned for 1:30 p.m. on the 25th. I won't read all of this to you. What happened was there was an incident at that rally. A car pulled up, I forget the name of the short street at the end of the Green that connects the 2 streets. That's it. A car pulled up there, stopped there with the radio blaring, some song about guns, refused to move. The volume was so loud that it seemed as if the car was pulsating. A number of us went up, myself included, and asked the driver to please move. He wouldn't move, wouldn't look at any of us, waved cars around him. And finally, a car pulled up behind him. The gentleman got out. He was quite disturbed, walked up to him. Then he walked over to me and said, I'm not going to get shot. This man obviously has mental problems. Went back to his car and waited. I called the police. The police said, we've already received a call, and an officer is being dispatched. No officer ever showed up. Subsequently, when my wife, who was one of the organizers, called the police department to find out, they said Sergeant Guthrie was in charge. He's not there. Sergeant Guthrie called back, said he was at the demonstration, and the reason that an officer didn't respond is somebody else called and said there's no need to send anybody anymore. I think that if the Falmouth Police Department is notified given a certain amount of time about a demonstration, they ought to provide a uniformed officer at that demonstration on the Green. When I went home that day, there was a cruiser parked in front of the classic car show that was going on.
Mr. Doobie, you're over your time. Thank you. Anyone else here for public comment? Please.
Just 1 minute, I timed it. Maury Harlow Hawks. Good evening. I'm sure you're all tired of seeing me over the past 3 years because it's the same old thing. I will go away when this board directs the acting town manager to set up a meeting with the Falmouth Fire and Rescue Department union to go from 14 to 16 men shift so that all the existing stations will be manned. July 1, a new contract was negotiated, and this was never brought up. It has been said over and over, and nothing changes. It's like Groundhog Day times 10. Again, West Falmouth has been closed all day Sunday, all day Monday, nothing new. The taxpayers voted an override for almost $1 million to pay for the firefighters to be in that station, yet the station continues to be closed way too many times. We were promised that it would be fully manned by July 1, 2022. Without changing 14 to 16, this dangerous situation will not end in more lives lost, as we all know, has been happening. So we just need, I know I really feel like a broken record, and you guys would like me to just go away, and I will go away when we can get 14 to 16. You can hire 100 firefighters, but you will not have the 16 to be start of shift to open all the existing stations. And we gave you $1 million, the fire department, to hire men, and we've given them overtime, almost $600 and something thousand, which we always have. I understand that. But without going from 14 to 16, we just went through union negotiation with them, we need to go from 14 to 16, and then we will see the stations open. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Finneran?
I'd like to just expand on Maury's statement, and I've spoken on this numerous times, and it's been years. And I used to say, especially to Maury and Arthur and Dan Scherer and a few others, that probably nothing's going to change until somebody dies. And people have died. Now it's time to change. That's all. Thanks. It's just wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Finneran. Any other public comment? Okay, town manager's preliminary report. Mr. Johnson-Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board has requested, I'll provide an overview of the agenda tonight. So we'll lead off with an annual meeting with the Conservation Commission, and we have the Chair, Jamie Matthews, here to give that report. Next, we have a report on the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. Amy Lowell, our wastewater superintendent, is here, and she will provide an informational report on the results of conceptual planning to protect the sewer line at Surf Drive from flood damage. The grant-funded study provides insights for further investigation that will be needed before determining the optimal design to protect this infrastructure. No board action is required on that item at this time. It's just an informational update. Next, we will have a presentation and a discussion on the fiscal year 2024 operating budget. This is very early, much earlier than the board typically talks about the operating budget. We're talking about the one that begins next July 1. But I felt it was important this year because there are a number of new initiatives that have come up, and we want to talk about the revenue context and the outlook and begin a conversation about prioritization. And our finance director, Jennifer Mullen, is here to give the presentation. She and I will jointly present that to you. Next, we have a discussion on a possible lease of 10 Pumping Station Road. We have 2 parcels of land there that have been used by the water department in the past. They're no longer needed because of the construction of the new treatment plant. And a couple of parties have come forward expressing an interest in leasing that property from the town. The process is a little bit sort of lengthy and convoluted, so tonight is really just a preliminary conversation. We'll show you the parcels and talk about where they are, and then I'm just looking to gauge the board's appetite in whether you want to pursue a lease or not. But any detailed discussion about any single potential lease is really something that we can't get into because it needs to be a competitive process. So again, that's just input on whether or not you want to proceed with the process to potentially lease that land. And then on the consent agenda, all of the licenses and administrative orders have been reviewed by staff, and I recommend approval. I would just comment, there is a memorandum of understanding with the Friends of Falmouth Dogs. That's a nonprofit that runs a dog adoption program at 155 Blacksmith Shop Road. They have for many years. We modified the agreement to allow adoption of dogs from out of state and said that we would revisit it at about this time. And we've had a good experience with the adoption program with the out-of-state dogs, and I'm recommending approval of this minor amendment to extend this memorandum of understanding.
So moved. Second?
Well, that's a consent
What are you
agenda.
moving? What are you moving?
That's in the
To continue to use that facility.
It's in the consent agenda.
Oh, it is. Excuse
Yes,
me. I'm sorry.
that's okay, no problem. We'll just wait until we get there to approve it. Anything else, Mr. Gentleman?
Yes, I should mention, under committee appointments, Kathleen Soltez, with apologies, has withdrawn from consideration for the Human Services Committee, so we will not be holding that interview. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the Beach Committee. John Modilewski, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, perfect.
Get out. You are coming up.
Thanks. I haven't had someone do that in ages. Pronounce my name the first time right. So I'm John Modilewski. I live at 82 Hudson Street in the Heights. A little bit about myself. I've been a full-time resident for 2.5 years. Moved here in December of 19, bought the house in 17, so we've been here for 5 years. But although I am fairly new as a resident, my family has been in the town for 30-plus years, parents, sister. So I'm not unfamiliar with the town at all. Professionally, I am in the investments, financial services, banking, investment planning arena, and have been doing that for 30 years. I've also owned 2 small businesses, a restaurant and an auto repair facility along the way. So I think I bring a little bit of a different perspective. The newness of someone who is fairly new to town, but I can also appreciate the history of the town and some of the things that kind of have come on before I came here. So I can appreciate both. But I think there's a few reasons why I'd like to participate in the Beach Committee, and it really revolves around what I think is somewhat of the mission or the statement of what they do, what the Beach Committee does, and it's ensuring the safety, the sustainability of the beaches. It's the advisory arm to you folks, and it really is, to me, it kind of hits home because it's the everyone in that statement, which is really why I'd like to do this. Is the beaches aren't just important to us in the town; they're important to everyone who comes into the town, visitors. The beaches are probably one of our most beautiful assets that we have, and the more that we can keep them safe, enjoyable, operating efficiently and effectively, I just think it helps everyone, not just folks in the town, but aesthetically, but also economically. And so there's a big balance there. So I think I can hopefully bring some of that balance in play. And secondly, just the way I am, although I'm new to town, it's taken me a few years to kind of figure out how things work a little bit, just from the outside. And I've always been one to want to get to know the operations of the town more, better, and deeper. I don't feel like living in a town passively is the way to go. I feel like you should be involved. I always say, especially to my kids, I don't want to hear you say anything until you've tried to do something. So, and I'm not saying that there needs to be a lot of work done, but just from getting to know the town again, getting to know the folks in the town, I feel like that's a big piece of why I do things. I came from a small town about 50 miles north, and I was heavily involved in the town itself from a youth sports perspective. I was the president of a couple of the associations up there and got to know the selectmen very well, got to know the different department heads, and so I just feel like I could offer a lot. My demeanor is direct but very fair. I'm open to all opinions, and I don't have a problem someone challenging or me challenging somebody. So just do it in the right way. That's all I ever say. So that's it from me.
Questions from the board?
What, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, my question was, you noted on here that you have not attended any of the beach committee meetings.
I have not.
And I was wondering if there's a specific reason why you haven't attended any yet.
Mostly because I have not been around. I was doing some traveling for work, so that's most of it. I've been actually keeping up with what's going on. I have a friend who is on the committee, so I've been keeping up with some of the things that are happening. But I'd be lying if I said that I'm up to speed on everything. I'm not.
Thank you.
That was the same question I was going to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we have another applicant, Geraldine Schad.
So my name is Lynn Schad, go by Lynn Schad, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you and consider my application for the Beach Committee. I am a resident of the Mara Vista area. We purchased property in March of 2010. We moved down to Falmouth in 2019, so we're living here full-time now. I have to say that the beaches during those 2 or 3 years that we had, because if you recall, 2019 was just before, everything sort of changed in our lives. They certainly were a solace and a saving grace, and I'm really glad that they were there. For me, anyway. I'm sure it was good for everybody else. When we moved down here full-time, I knew I wanted to get involved in the community, and I started. I'm very passionate about what's happening to our climate, and in particular what's happening to our lovely coastal community. So me, along with a few other folks, started the Falmouth Climate Action Network, and I'm happy to say that we have made some progress, and the Select Board has been with us on some of that progress as well. I'm also a realtor in town, so I do also recognize the economic importance of keeping our beaches safe and clean, and we have huge challenges ahead of us with regards to coastal erosion and sea level rise, and I want to be part of that, solving those problems, and that's the reason why I have decided to apply for this position.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
I have a question. It says that you've attended the meeting. It says, have you attended any meetings of the committee for which you're applying? It says June 15th. Is that?
That's correct.
Is that saying that you've attended that one meeting or meeting since June 15th?
I attended the June 15th meeting, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board?
I just would comment that I think that Ms. Shad's interest in coastal resiliency is maybe a bit of a plus compared to just, wanting to give back to the community, which is, I think, right now with the coastal, the issues with the coastal resiliency impacting the beaches, I think the Beach Committee has taken a focus to that, so I appreciate your interest in that.
Thank you.
So is there a motion?
That would be my motion to, unless there's other questions. Go.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to express the fact that it's pretty important to attend meetings, to committees that you want to apply to at least get your feet wet and know what you're getting yourself into, if nothing else. I know we have vacancies on a lot of them, but I've found through experience in talking to other people the value of attending meetings prior to being appointed to those boards. This is a general statement and an observation, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I would motion to appoint Geraldine Shad to the Beach Committee for a term ending 2025.
June 30th, 2025?
Yes. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, thank you.
But please.
No.
Appreciate
There'll be plenty of opportunities, so. There's nothing that says that you have to be a member of the committee to attend the meetings and to actually begin to contribute to them. So I would invite you to get involved. We want people like yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, vote to appoint Kimberly Fish to the Barnstable County Home Consortium Advisory Council.
Madam Chair, while Kim is coming up to the podium, I know the board is well aware, but for the public, Kim is our housing coordinator, and I certainly recommend this appointment, and I've asked Kim to say a few words about what the Home Consortium is.
I wrote them down, if you don't mind me reading them.
Go ahead.
The Home Consortium Advisory Council consists of 17 members, 1 representative from each town and 2 at-large members, as well as the Affordable Housing Specialist of the Cape Cod Commission as an ex officio member. It determines the allocation of federal home funds received by the county, establishes program policies, acts as I would act as a liaison with their respective towns and reports relevant regional, state, and federal housing policy information. And they meet once a month. That's basically what they are in a nutshell. And it would be a great opportunity for me to collaborate with the other communities in Barnstable County regarding affordable housing.
Any questions from the board?
Comment. That sounds like you know what you're getting into.
I do.
They have an outstanding background to start off in, so I'd be happy to. Is it an appointment from the town manager?
No, it's a select board appointment.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to appoint Kim Fish to the position of of representative to the Home Consortium, I guess it's called, yeah.
It's a mouthful. That's why I wrote it down.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Kim.
Thank you.
Do you know about the August 1st and 2nd Cape Cod Commission Summit?
I do not.
The One Cape Summit.
Oh, that
One
is
Cape.
the One Cape I do
Yep.
then.
Yes.
The One Cape I
Good.
do. Thank you.
Okay, Conservation Commission report.
You're on.
Okay, and you have 15 minutes.
And I didn't even touch it.
You want to type that in, or you want me to type that in?
I assume you don't need those lights on for FCT.
I kind of like it like that. Change it if you want.
No, I just,
I'm comfortable.
It usually takes me 2 tries.
I agree it's hot. Do we cool it down?
Yeah.
And Summer Concom, that looks like you. You can use either this. Should be yeah. Forward and back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's automatic shut off. After 4:30, you got to keep resetting it, I guess.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson Staub, Ms. O'Keefe. Good evening, I'm Jamie Matthews, Chairman of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. On behalf of my colleagues, I offer you this report. Our goal, of course, is to protect and regulate lands under our jurisdiction through the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. We also serve as stewards to the town conservation lands. Our staff, these professionals keep the process running smoothly, making us as efficient as possible while meeting all regulatory deadlines and guidelines. They also work closely with and are instrumental in guiding applicants through the process to assure a positive outcome. And I missed a step. We have Kevin Newton's our recently departed agent. Alyssa Bergeron is our recently appointed full-time agent. Joshua Faraday is our newly appointed part-time agent. So who serves you?
We're fortunate in Falmouth to have the volunteers we have. These dedicated individuals bring so much to the table. This board shows such diversity. We have a scientist, an educator, policymaker, a couple of engineers, on and on. And sadly, we've just lost two members, Pat Harris, Peter Walsh, moved on to greener pastures, but we welcome our newest member, Melissa Freitag. So what did we do this year? We did what all agencies did. We had meetings. We meet every Wednesday night with few exceptions, and occasionally other days as necessary to meet the regulatory deadlines. Our meetings are to hold public hearings on various applications brought before us, where we apply the regulations of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. This year we held over 270 hearings for notices of intent, requests for determination of applicability, amended order of conditions, and unfortunately, enforcement orders. That took just over 42 meetings. We maintain an average commissioner attendance of over 95%. Always had a quorum. This is a true testament to the dedication of our volunteer members. I think I went too fast. Sorry. We maintain a 96.4% approval rating. You've heard this. 96.4 people out of 100 love us. No, not really. But it does mean that over 96% of the applicants received a favorable order of conditions for their project that allows them to move forward with conditions that best protect our wetland resources. It's important to note, in addition to the actual meetings, each commissioner spends an average of 4 hours a week preparing for these meetings, including a comprehensive review of all the relevant paperwork and plans, then conducting the site visits necessary to acclimate themselves with the conditions on site, all in the interest of making informed decisions. Falmouth has a vast amount of wetlands, including ponds, rivers, and other freshwater wetlands. We also enjoy over 95 miles of saltwater shoreline. Falmouth has 169 parcels of conservation restricted land, encompassing over 2,193 acres, all of which falls under the watchful eye of Mark Kasperzik. Some of the current projects, these restoration projects, just another step in increasing resiliency to climate change through ecological restoration and promoting stewardship of our natural environment through collaboration. These restoration projects could not be accomplished without the perseverance of a myriad of volunteers and the help of other town departments and state agencies. A ton of people that help out on these projects. More resiliency through restoration. Helping to absorb the coastal storm, flood, surge. We're all looking at sea level rise, all that stuff. Thank you to all of our wildlife partners, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Conservation, DCR. Couldn't do it without them. The next phase of the Coonamessett currently is in the planning and engineering phase. This is going to come up quick. There's plenty of grants available, a lot of people ready to go. Hopefully you guys are. The AmeriCorps program provides some very dedicated volunteers helping the town maintain public access, and thanks to Emily, our administrative volunteer, proper records. These are just some of the places they've been working on this year. As with the AmeriCorps, there have been many Eagle Scout projects, oh, they left, sorry, helping us provide better public access. Thank you especially to them.
This is a Troop 40 project. The other young men were from Troop 38,
Yeah.
so we have active units.
They're always looking for stuff to do. And of course, we put them to work. Projects like the Coonamessett River Restoration, on behalf of the town, have received numerous awards for their collaboration, making these projects recognized statewide, all possible with the help of so many volunteers, donations, and grant funding. I mean, let's take a look at it all. Special thanks to to the various town departments for their continued support of our efforts on behalf of the town. Marine Environmental Services, DPW, including Engineering, Parks and Highway, Bob Shea and GIS, happy retirement, Bob. Town Council, Building Department, including Health and Zoning, Accounting, Administration, town meeting members, and of course you, the members of the Select Board. Wow. But I have one more of my own. So the last 2 years have been wild. Who'd have thought we'd be doing meetings online? We had our first Zoom meeting just 24 hours after the governor's declaration. Thanks to the dedicated professionals in the IT department, with 3 out of 4 gone now, Greg, Thomas, Adriana, and Justin. I'd like to thank my esteemed colleagues for their patience and perseverance. This year was another of long meetings, much debate, and some difficult decisions. Thank you guys for your hard work and dedication. What you guys bring to the table is much appreciated by this chair. Thank you to our staff for keeping us in line and the engineers smiling. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the people of the town of Falmouth and to protect its resources. We value your support in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments,
No, just
Mr.
a
Patterson?
comment, yeah. Well, I've been liaison to the Conservation Commission for 8 years, and I'd have to say that I can't do anything but stand behind everything that Jamie has presented. It truly is probably the most active and enduring and committed group of citizens that we have in town. I mean, they clearly have their heart in it and really do us all a tremendous favor by trying to guide this town to basically see a bigger picture than just that own individual person's project that they want to do on their land, but have to recognize the impact that they're going to have on us and future generations. So my hat's off to all your hard work, and really my respect to all of you that serve on that. And particularly to Betsy for her instrumental efforts in getting the Coonamessett River Restoration Project going, and husbanding that and organizing it, and getting the grant money and all that. I mean, that's just a phenomenal contribution to this town. Thank you, Jamie.
Other comments?
Good job.
Other comments from the board, questions?
No questions.
Thank you very much, Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Amazing work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, report on Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness MVP Action Grant for conceptual design of flood resiliency improvements for sewer infrastructure. Amy Lowell, 15 minutes.
How does it sound with my mask on? Can you hear me okay? I'm Amy Lowell. I'm the wastewater superintendent.
It may be easier for our TV audiences to see your
Okay.
vocalization, if you don't mind.
Yep. So I'm speaking today about sewer flood resiliency evaluation. GHD was the town's consultant on this, and they did get support from Woods Hole Group, who's done a lot of the previous work for the town on this subject. Previous town evaluations have concluded that the sewer system components are some of the most vulnerable and critical assets in town, including our Park Road lift station photographed here, and our sewer force main is under the bike path in this location here shown on the right. The town got a grant of $104,000 this past fiscal year, for conceptual design of some sewer system flood resiliency improvements to look at three main categories: looking at alternatives for the Woods Hole sewer force main, evaluating a range of options for the Park Road area collection and transmission system in Woods Hole, and preparing a conceptual design of flood-proofing measures for 3 coastal lift stations. I'm going to talk first about the Woods Hole force main. Woods Hole force main runs 4.6 miles from Woods Hole to the Jones Palmer lift station up near the hospital. And there are two sections of it that are most vulnerable at this point. There's a section along the south coast that I had a photograph of. That section is under the bike path, where the bike path is within a few feet of Vineyard Sound. And that's shown here on the figure. That area is subject, of course, to erosion and inundation, particularly during storm events. That section was lined in 2012, which did give it some longevity, but if it's undermined, the lining will not protect it over the long term. This section in Woods Hole Village is vulnerable to corrosion from saline groundwater as well. So there are several options that I'll run through briefly. Obviously, this was a long-term grant, so I'm summarizing, not a long-term grant, it was a year-long grant, and so I'm summarizing the evaluation that was done. One of the options is to relocate that most vulnerable section inland to Oyster Pond Road, as shown here in a big green line. Another option is to relocate all or most of the coastal section inland to Woods Hole Road. So I've shown in this wide green line here, I've shown the entire relocation. Obviously, there are other options which involve less relocation, but one of the challenges here is that Oyster Pond divides Surf Drive and the bike path from Woods Hole Road. So you really, there's no real way, there's no shortcut around Oyster Pond Road. So you do end up with a longer relocation to get around Oyster Pond. A third option that came up during this evaluation was to directionally drill new HDE pipe at depth under the current location of the force main. And the idea with this would be that if you install a new force main that's 40 feet deep, it is not 40 feet under the existing shoreline, then it is not vulnerable to erosion, coastal erosion during these storms or day-to-day. We have 15 minutes here, so I'm skipping to the cost summary and the pros and cons of these options. These are preliminary estimates of cost in 2022 dollars. So relocating the most vulnerable section to Oyster Pond Road would cost about $4 million. That's about 4,500 feet of pipeline relocation. I see relocation, but we're building a new force main and abandoning the old. That would be the lowest cost of the 3 that we look at here, and would have less disturbance from than the entire relocation option. But the main problem with that is that there's future erosion potential. Showing here, as we've shown here, we were ending at the where the bike path crosses Surf Drive. In the out years of the Woods Hole Group's modeling, this area here between Surf Drive and Oyster Pond becomes subject to erosion as well, and even Oyster Pond Road in the next 30 years becomes potentially vulnerable to flooding. And that flooding during storm events even includes if the town does not officially abandon the bike path and Surf Drive. So this is not a 50-year solution. This is maybe a 20-plus year solution as far as the storm and erosion protection. Relocating the entire southern section to Woods Hole Road, obviously that's a very big project with an estimated cost of about a little less than $13 million. The advantage, of course, is it takes the sewer force main entirely out of the flood zone, the flood and erosion zone. It's the highest cost and it's the most disturbance. Obviously, it would disturb Woods Hole Road. We could relocate a slightly shorter section, but most of that would have to be most of it would have to be replaced in order to relocate out of the flood zone. There is some potential overlap between the sewer main replacement area and needed water main work, so that is something that I can look into a little bit more. The last option, as I said, was to directionally drill pipe. The preliminary estimate of cost for that was $4.6 million. It's the least disturbance because you wouldn't be excavating in the town roads. You would need a launch point and an exit point for the directional drilling, and perhaps 3 points if you were going to line a significantly long section. In order to really consider that, I would want to do further evaluation. As I said, that came up during this evaluation, and I don't feel comfortable right now recommending that solution or any of these without a little further evaluation. So I just do discuss that at the end.
Hi, sorry, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
About 4 years ago, I attended a meeting that involved the Oyster Pond community and concerns about the environmental impacts on Oyster Pond of all those septic tanks that surround it.
Yep.
And I'm asking the question, why aren't we making sure these replacement mains, trying to solve this problem, don't accommodate sewer hookups in the future? And to me, it seems to me the Woods Hole Road approach, gives you an opportunity to feed into a larger main that would carry it on down and allow us to at least start investing in eventually hooking up sewers to some of those areas that already are impacted by nitrogen overloading of, at least Oyster Pond is one example. So I don't want us to forget about the long-term strategic thinking about some of the problems that we're already facing that could be included in the solutions for replacing that main section along Surf Drive and the bike path there in that area of Oyster Pond.
That is an option that has been considered for Oyster Pond. The Water Quality Management Committee did do a substantial amount of evaluation of options for Oyster Pond. And in the end, the two options that got the most consideration were converting all of those properties within that lower watershed to individual denitrifying systems and connecting to the sewer. And the town is proceeding with even higher priority, even more impaired watersheds to the east, but Oyster Pond watershed is one of the watersheds that was in the category that the Water Quality Management Committee was looking at for the phase beyond Great Pond. So a future phase of potentially of sewering. It would obviously increase the cost of this force main relocation to add the sewering project to it. It is possible to add a lift station that pumps into the force main. It is more expensive and more complicated than a regular lift station because you have to design it to overcome the pressure in the main and not cause problems there. So it is a little bit more of a complex process, but it can be done.
Yeah, I just want to see us make an investment that's going to carry us, through 50 years, or maybe probably even less than that, but somewhere on the order of maybe 20 years from now, when we can get through those other projects and have the financing capacity to start addressing the issue of Oyster Pond.
Okay.
And this is preliminary, am I correct?
The evaluation here, yes.
Yes, so let's let Amy go on, and then we can ask questions.
I hear what you're saying. Thank you for the suggestion. In any of those options or all of those options, we would need to line up to 3,200 feet of force main in the Woods Hole Village area. The 3,200 feet is approximately the wide green line on this figure. I say up to because, again, I believe we need additional evaluation to narrow the scope of that and to look in more detail at the feasibility of options. The estimated cost at this time in 2022 of doing that lining would be about $2 million. We need, before a recommendation on that, I think I want to look at the feasibility of lining through some of the steep bends in this area. The force main dives under the Eel Pond channel, and we need to look with an engineer and perhaps with lining contractors about the feasibility of lining through those bends. And if that won't work for certain sections, whether we need to cut out certain sections that are experiencing corrosion and replace them right there on site. Another option would be to drill, again, another pipe under the Eel Pond channel, for example. So this is, again, a separate section that would need its own separate solution. Park Road Collection and Transmission System evaluation. Park Road Lift Station is in a wetland at the end of Park Road in Woods Hole. That station only serves 23 single-family residential properties, all of which are in the AE zone, which is in the flood zone in Woods Hole. That station, as you can see, the station is in that center picture. That station flooded during the March 2018 storm. Yes?
I'm sorry, very quickly, what is an AE zone?
I'm sorry. I don't know actually what the initials stand for, but it's on this figure, it's the figure on the left here. It's showing the coastal AE has a wave height of 3 to 1.5 feet, and slightly inland of that is wave height of 1.5 feet. But it's the 100-year flood zone.
Okay, thank you.
I think it has something to do with elevation, average elevation in a critical storm situation.
Yeah.
A 100-year storm or a 500-year storm.
Yeah, I don't know what those initials stand for. I apologize. But
No, that's okay. It makes me feel better. I didn't know either.
Thank you. So this lift station is in a wetland that is subject to flooding during high tide, and it was entirely surrounded by water for almost a week during that March 2018 storm, and the generator below ground was damaged irreparably during that. We now operate the station during a power outage with a portable generator. So we looked at several options for this station. One of the considerations is that it serves 23 properties. So we want to look at the magnitude of the solution and the number of properties served for it. So an option is to build an elevated structure like what you see here. It is a significant elevation, however. This is the base of the floor of that structure is about 17 feet above ground. So that's even higher. We have a new Silver Beach lift station that is elevated and looks somewhat similar to this, but that was constructed to an elevation 12. So this would be even higher than that. And that would contain the generator and the controls for the lift station, but still you would still have pumps and access below ground for the equipment, for the pump equipment. Another option that we've examined in a fair amount of detail is just relocating the electrical for that station. So this photograph here on the left is the top of Park Road at Gardner Road. So you're looking basically at Gardner Road. So it's about 9 feet higher than the bottom of Park Road where the lift station is. It is not entirely out of the floodplain, but it's 9 feet higher. So you could elevate the shutoff and the meter and the electrical and controls for this station on a pole and a post adjacent or at this intersection, and that would keep more of the equipment for this lift station out of harm's way. You would still continue to run this station with a portable generator during a power outage. So the wastewater division has a portable generator. The operators drive it there when the power is out here. So if that road, Gardner Road, is flooded, we won't be able to get the generator there, and we won't be able to continue to serve that station. You would, of course, need to flood-proof the hatches in that wetland as well. Third option is converting those 24 properties to a low-pressure sewer system with grinder pumps. That would mean providing a grinder pump for each house and replacing the gravity system there with a low-pressure, small-diameter force main system that would still discharge to the gravity system in Woods Hole. Preliminary evaluation of those options, the elevated structure would cost about $1.1 million, and that provides the most protection for the electrical facilities for the lift station, but it does have a potential visual impact that would be visible from up on, I'm blanking on the road, but Buzzards Bay Avenue and other areas in Woods Hole. It would be very challenging construction. The town only has a 30-foot right-of-way there, and it's in the marsh, so it's a difficult spot to build. It's a highest cost, and we would still have the pumps and the lift station components in operating in that wetland. Electrical relocation is less than a quarter of the cost, which is an advantage. It would allow continued operation during moderate flooding. It would protect the electrical from flood damage, but we still have these operational issues of bringing a portable generator out every time the power goes out, which is not infrequent in that area of Woods Hole, and it will not be able to continue to operate during extreme flooding. Low pressure system, the preliminary cost estimate was $900,000. That would eliminate this municipal lift station in a wetland. But the challenge is that these people have all had a sewer connection for many, many years, and we would have to start over again with a grinder pump and a new sewer connection for each of those property owners. When the power's out, if the property owner has their own home generator, then that would continue to run. If they do not, then they would have minimal storage for wastewater until the power is restored. That's the same as all of the people in Mara Vista and Falmouth Heights that have grinder pumps.
Amy, I'm just going to let you know that your time is up. However, we're not through, so I just want to give Amy more time unless anyone on the board objects. This is important stuff. Go ahead. We cut you a little short, so
Okay,
please go on.
I apologize.
No, we cut you short. Go ahead.
Okay. Flood proofing of 3 coastal lift stations. These are actually very similar, so I can just give you the gist of it with one of them. The Woods Hole lift station, the modifications that we're looking at for each of these stations are not a 50-year solution. They are to improve to protect the equipment in the stations during a 100-year storm over the next, say, 20 years. So we looked at flood elevations for design storms and doing things like moving vents to the roof or above the projected flood line, flood-proofing louvers on the sides of buildings, raising the electrical, as I talked about for the Park Road lift station. You raise the meter and raise the electrical shutoff for the facility above floodplain, seal all the wall penetrations, and actually test the flood proofing of the hatches. We have near ground level hatches there, and we want to confirm that those are going to protect the equipment in the station during a storm. So the short-term recommendations for the 3 lift stations are all very similar. Surf Drive, Falmouth Beach, and Inner Harbor are somewhat similar. Those are lower cost efforts, and those are listed here are the preliminary cost estimates for doing those things. Sealing existing gravity manholes from inflow would be an additional cost that was not evaluated during this grant project, but sealing manholes would reduce the infiltration into the sewer system during high water levels, and it's something that we ought to be looking at as part of any one of these solutions. So as far as next steps, I will be submitting a capital plan requests for further feasibility evaluation, and then design and construction of some of these actions. And I've listed here the further evaluations that would be needed. I've discussed each of these in my presentation, so I don't think I need to reiterate them. Obviously, it would be, the town is looking at vulnerability assessments, town-wide, and I assume we'll continue to do that. And I've been trying to follow that and see what that, whether there is guidance there on what the future is of these sewered neighborhoods. Surf Drive area is, for example, is one of several examples here. Surf Drive, the Surf Drive lift station is in the Falmouth Beach parking lot, and it serves Surf Drive, lower portion of Mill Road, lower portion of Shore Street, these areas that are all subject to coastal flooding in storms, and increasingly during flooding during during high tide. So the town, the wastewater division needs to think about, and I'm looking to how the town will be planning for these lower lying areas of town. If the plan is to go up with everything, if all the buildings are going to be raised, then and the plan is to keep properties and rebuild properties in those areas, and the direction is to provide services for them, then we'll need to do that. But these are some pretty challenging areas to provide service over that 50-year time frame. That's the end of my presentation.
Questions, comments? Mr. Brown?
A comment on the first one, on the sewer main. I think that it would be a shame to spend $4 million or 4.6 to still be in the same area of the coast. I don't think that's really solving the problem. We're just kind of pushing it down the road for, as Amy said, 15, 20 years. And if we think it's 20, the way things are escalating, it's probably less. So I would say that I would advocate to consider the Woods Hole Road option. And I wonder if we might have an opportunity to, as we did with Mr. McConaty's suggestion on the bike path with the electrical line, maybe we'd have a chance to dig off the side of the road. Even we might have to take some extra right-of-way there, but maybe we could create a multi-use path along the side of the road to get some benefit. Maybe then we get some grants for complete streets to go with the municipal vulnerability program. That's my comment on that one. Do you want me to wait on comment on the other Park Road?
Go ahead.
I don't think that we want to build all that infrastructure in the wetlands and the marsh. I think we need to go to the low-pressure system and just help those homeowners with the cost and go with the low-pressure connections and
grinder pumps.
If we can get them some interest-free loans to get generators for the homes or whatever it takes to get to it that way, I think that would be my choice.
Thank you. Ms. Scott Price?
I just wanted to say, Amy, you are really impressive. Everything you present to us is really well done. Even the draft things, I just think are really awesome. So
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I also think you can explain it in a way that those of us who have no background in this can kind of understand it, and I really appreciate your ability to do that. It takes time and effort.
Thank you.
You're speaking a different language from what I'm used to, so I appreciate that. Mr. Zelinski, Mr. Patterson, did you have a comment?
Nope, I made my suggestion earlier. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
I appreciate that feedback, and Doug, I hear your recommendations, and I will take them into consideration.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Okay, 2024 budget priorities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, while Jennifer Mullen is coming up to the podium, I just sort of reintroduce the topic and start by thanking Jen, because Jennifer is supposed to be focusing on the capital budget right now, and I added this extra planning session to start this early conversation about the operating budget. And, you know, again, really what this is about is I know that the board has identified a number of potential new initiatives, and I didn't want to try to cram too much into one strategic planning session and then with an expectation that we're going to come out of that with, really a good consensus about what priorities the board has for the operating budget. I think we need more conversations over a longer period of time to, for me to effectively incorporate your priorities into the budget that ultimately the town manager, whoever that may be, come December is going to submit. So this is a very early outlook. Jen, we're talking about the fiscal year that begins a year from now, so we don't have precise forecast of all of our revenues and expenses yet, but this is a starting conversation to get a sense of what your priorities are.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction, and I think we've allotted 15 minutes.
Thank you. It's nice to see everybody tonight. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So right now, as we start to think about the FY24 budget, we just started the FY23 budget. So if I talk about the fiscal year that just ended, remember there's a year in between. We always start the budget process well in advance of, like this would start in a year. So we're always looking ahead and trying to project. So right now what we're looking at, as you know from reading, watching the news, we have record inflation. We have, how does the inflation and the economy may be going into a recession and the market, we're in a bear market, how would that affect the town of Falmouth, and how does that affect our budget process? And that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through, because those are the things that, we're thinking about for FY24. We have limited reoccurring revenues. 75% of our revenue is on property taxes, and when we set the budget, we have to present a balanced budget under Mass General Law. We can use all of those revenues from taxes to support that budget. Really, where the flexibility comes in is with your estimated local receipts, and trying to be conservative and giving yourself enough flexibility in there to see what might come up. Because when we put the budget together, there's still some unknowns. So with inflation, so then every year that when we look at the budget, we look at fixed cost increases. So I look forward to that in FY24 would be health insurance, pension, utilities, things of that nature. And then we wanted to discuss select board initiatives. There's been a lot of discussion about some initiatives from the select board and how that might fit into what we're looking at in FY24. So the inflation, what are the effects on the operating budget? Well, it reduces your revenue, it reduces your estimated local receipts, and I'll get to that in the next slide. But it's also an increased cost of doing business. And one of the things that I can point out is, we have supply chain issues, we are, increased costs of construction, although we don't have construction in the operating budget, but there's increased costs that would be in your reoccurring expenses. So the reduced revenue, how would that affect your estimated local receipts? Motor vehicle excise. When we finished the fiscal year that we just ended, we did have an increase in motor vehicle excise. We did very, very well. But as we look forward, we know that new cars aren't being produced. Like there's a huge wait for them. Used cars are very high prices. When you think about it, when you bring in your motor vehicle excise, if you buy a new car, you have a large excise tax bill, and it depreciates over time pretty rapidly. Used cars, you have small increased tax bills. So that will definitely probably affect our motor vehicle excise maybe in the coming year, as we're just embarking on now. And then we're thinking about with a recession or reduced revenue, it would probably affect it in FY24 as well. The lodging and meals tax in a recession, inflation, are people traveling as much? Are they staying at hotels? Are they, booking their Airbnbs? And right now, we have a huge increase in that area. I think we're all booked out this summer. But how would that be in FY24? It's something to just be aware of and to think about and to build enough flexibility that we can react to it. So if I start to see, reduced revenue in your estimated local receipts, we have that covered because we've conservatively estimated those receipts. And if we have to adjust something in the budget, we have 2 bites at that apple in November and April. So we always, we're always looking at it. I'm always looking at the estimated receipts monthly. Building permits, we've already seen a slowdown in building. The permits, they're still coming in, but it is starting to slow down. We're starting to see that slowdown in building permits. One thing to think about as we look at the FY24 budget. So in FY23, we estimated, I think it was 21.1 million in estimated receipts. That's in FY22, I'm sorry, that's the year that just ended. In FY22, that we're just going, FY23 that we're going into right now, we estimated 22.5 million. So we increased that 1.5 million. And so then what are we looking for FY24? Now remember, in FY24, we're going to take $1 million in your existing lodging tax revenue. And that has been earmarked from the select board in policy that we will bring to you, the written policy in September when we look at the budget policy. That's earmarked $500,000 for the school and $500,000 for affordable housing. So we've taken that off the board. Also, when you have a decrease in estimated receipts, it limits your budget, like I discussed, your budget flexibility. And also, we voted at town meeting an increase in hotel motel excise from 5% to 6% in a community impact fee. So even though, it really depends on how inflation, or if we go into a recession, how that might affect your your other excise, your short-term rental and your hotel motel. So we've increased the percentage, but that increased percentage we've earmarked for affordable housing. So as we go into FY24, where our receipts were really strong in 22, you have that year lag. We have to keep an eye on FY23 to see what's happening, to see what we can do in FY24, knowing that we have to take more money in FY24 and allocate that to affordable housing for the select board's policy, which already limits your flexibility. So when I look at the FY24 budget, this is a kind of a calculation that I would do. So Proposition 2.5, we usually, exercise our full our full revenue from Proposition 2.5, which is 2.7 million, and we'll estimate new growth at 800,000. So we have about 3.5 million in new revenue. And then when we look at increases, we'll probably have an increase in health insurance. I've estimated that at like 3%. Salary increases, you have your step and your COLAs, that's about 600,000. Your fuel will probably be about 500,000 as, if it keeps going up or even if it stays steady. Fuel has been coming down in the last month steadily, but, it's going to take some time to find out why is that. Is it going to go back up again? Really, where is the economy going, especially as we look at FY24? Property and liability insurance, would be an increase. Your curbside pickup contract, we just signed a new contract. That's already in the contract. We'll have an increase of 180,000. The school department is 1.2 million. We usually give them about 2.3% of the Proposition 2.5. Upper Cape Tech, more kids are going to there, so we're thinking about 350,000. So when you look at the bottom line, you're saying, well, we're already behind the 8 ball, about 830,000. What I want to tell you, that's normal year. We look at that every year. Some expenses come in favorably and some don't. So you're always trying to put that puzzle together in looking at priorities and, what's the main priority. We want to, fund a couple new positions, so we might increase our estimated receipts, which we did last year. So I just, I don't want to scare anybody, but I just want to let everybody know that this is a yearly problem that we have, but we really don't do preliminary budget conversations this early in the year where I show you these figures. When we come to you, what's your budget policy? And then we come back to you and say, okay, we took your priorities and here's your balanced budget. But there's a lot that goes on between now and, what is state revenue going to look like? Are we going to bring in more in state revenue? And things of that nature. And so now I will let Peter talk about new initiatives.
Thank you, Jen. So I've listed here some new initiatives that the board has raised, and I've also identified a few others that I want to bring into the conversation. And I would also say that although I have a sense, having been here for a little bit and working with the departments of where some of the areas of need are, certainly before I would present any sort of recommended budget, I will need to go through a more thorough vetting process with the departments and give them all an opportunity to raise their hand and say, hey, these are new initiatives that, that I have a need for, and did you consider these? But just as sort of a starting point for this conversation, the police department has a need for more patrol officers as well as social workers, but given the struggle that they have had with filling patrol officer positions, I don't know that we'll necessarily be looking at a lot of new patrol positions this year, but there is a need for social workers that we have talked about, and that's a consideration. Fire staffing, the select board has voted a policy to staff 6 stations. We will need more staff to reach that goal, and I have spoken with the chair about having a more detailed conversation. It's a complicated issue, and it's a very important issue, the fire staffing question, and I want to go through that in much greater detail at an upcoming meeting, maybe as soon as July 25th. So I don't want to talk today about how many positions there are, because there's a lot of context and not a lot of analysis to go with that. So we'll have that conversation soon. The Coastal Resiliency Sustainability Coordinator position was a non-binding vote at town meeting, so that's on our list. We've also identified an energy coordinator and/or a grant writer as a need if we want to, really make significant progress on renewable energy and sustainability issues. In the Public Works Department, there are a couple of needs that have bubbled up. One is an assistant parks superintendent. That's a position that had existed in the past and was eliminated for reasons related to resource availability, and with the reduced seasonal staff available, that has become a much more important need that I think we want to talk about. The facilities department, there have been some additional facilities added without staff, and overall the demands that we place on that department are, in my view anyway, that's one of the ones that we want to take a look at to say, do they really have the resources they need to do the job we're asking of them? The Zoning Board of Appeals has a need that has been identified and talked about for additional administrative support. That's on the list. Conservation Commission had a request to increase a half-time administrator position to a full-time position. So that's on our list. And Jennifer and I have spoken about a need for more resources in the procurement area so that we could provide better support to all the departments for the procurement process. So those are sort of that's the initial take, and I have one more slide, and then we'll open up for discussion in terms of where the board is on those issues. Jen, could you just advance that one more slide for me?
There you go.
Thanks. So as I said, we want to start hearing from you about where your priorities are, and as we get further along in the budget planning process and we have a better idea of what the revenue outlook is and what some of our other cost challenges are, then we'll have a better idea of what items, what new initiatives we might be able to take on within this budget without an override. It might be very limited. I will just say that at the outset. And then if the board wants to talk about an override, then we want to talk about, well, which, how big of an override do you want to consider, and which items might be on it. There will be more information at a future meeting, and again, this is an early conversation culminating in a town manager's budget being submitted in December. And the last note that I want to make is that we certainly want to bring the Finance Committee in on this conversation sooner rather than later. Especially if we're going to be talking about an override, or if we're going to be talking about a lot of new initiatives. We want to I think, have an opportunity for a dialogue before the town manager's budget is submitted in December. So with that, happy to entertain your questions and comments.
Mr. Brown?
Well, I think in the last few years, it's become more apparent that we're not quite sustainable where we're at. Every year, one department does better than another. Somebody's always short of help, and there's always things that we're not quite getting done. Like, I think the Transportation Committee identified our pavement management as could use some more resources. That's a big one that, you know, there's a lot of investment required to get to that point where you're more sustainable. So the coastal resiliency is something we haven't even cracked open yet. That's going to be a massive drain on resources. I think we're going to have to just kind of take a real honest look at what it takes to make our town sustainable and bring it to the public and say, you know, we've been maybe underpaying in taxes for a while, and maybe we need to right the ship. And if we do that, I think we need to also consider some kind of a implementation plan that would allow seniors to defer, or somehow that we can soften the blow to the people who can't really afford a property tax increase. I don't know how that would be done, or if there is a way, but I'd like to try to consider it if there is such a way to implement it that way, that maybe the property owner, if they're a senior citizen, could defer that until the time when their family takes over the property, and then they could take on the new debt. You know, I don't know. So it's a tough conversation to have, but I'm glad you're bringing it early.
Mr. Patterson?
I would like to see really a list of all of the projects so we can begin to think in terms of priorities. And then, of course, there's the scheduling, right? Because we're not going to do them all at the same time. So how would we stagger them using time to sort of help us prioritize those that are most urgent and those that we can afford to put out into out years? But a list of the foreseeable construction or large projects, or I don't even say large projects, but, and then, of course, just simply the cost of living increases that we're going to have to you know, supply to our staff, you know, the staff costs, because that's huge in our budget. So I'd like to see a list so that we begin to kind of put it all into perspective and start doing the trade-off of when and how much. And
Are projects this budget?
So, right, so
I guess-
Sam is talking, you know, sort of big picture,
Yeah.
capital plus operating. So
right.
we will be coming back soon with the capital improvement plan, and we'll be talking about the smaller capital items and the large construction projects. So we will definitely have a list of those large construction projects when we talk about the capital side. We were primarily focused on the operating side for tonight.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in for a second, because I just, you know, just to clear up any confusion, because Doug mentioned debt. So debt in capital projects is really paid for through, you know, debt and the capital projects plan, and that's what we vote in November. Those are, the debt doesn't stay on the tax rate forever, it declines over time. And when we have major capital projects for coastal resiliency and things like that that you're talking about, yeah, that's all capital. And that's one-time revenue, one-time expenses. What we're talking about is the operating budget, which is reoccurring revenue for reoccurring expenses. So I think the way to look at it is new positions. New positions, because if you have an override, that's going to increase your tax base forever. Debt declines, it goes away. The override stays there forever. So then you would hire new positions that would be here year after year after year with benefits. And that's really a good way to look at what we're looking at tonight is new positions and your appetite for new positions.
But they all determine what the tax rate is going to be, whether it's debt service or, you know, staff costs.
Right. Well, you bring up a good point. So right now in our and policies can change. So in our policy for our debt, we have been putting in capital projects that fits into our debt drop-off. It's been a long-standing policy. But the board can override that policy, change your policy, and say, you know what, we want to increase the tax rate with projects. And so if you want to increase the tax rate with projects, again, that doesn't stay forever where an override does. And then what you would do is say, okay, for example, I like the $13 million option for the SOAR. I can't fit that into the debt drop-off because we have major SOAR improvements that I've already fit in. So, okay, that's going to increase. So if we have a $13 million capital project, how much will that increase your tax rate? And then you can propose that project on a tax rate increase, and then we would calculate that. But that would be a capital project that would go probably in the fall or in April, because you'd want to have a debt exclusion. We wouldn't be able to fit it into the window of, Proposition 2.5. So it would have to go to the voters on a town meeting, and then it would go to the ballot. But that's for, capital infrastructure projects, any type of thing like that. What we're talking about tonight is the operating budget and positions.
And I guess I don't feel ready to make suggestions in terms of priorities yet. And I'm assuming that we'll be doing a lot of that in our retreat. But I appreciate sort of cueing us into this now and early so that we can start really thinking about it and be well prepared to talk about this at our retreat. So
Great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I also just want to say I appreciate, Jennifer, I think you're fantastic as well, especially breaking down what you just discussed about the capital improvement. I think that's a very complicated and technical, but you've made it very clear how that works, and I appreciate that.
And you drill home the difference between the capital budget and the operating budget, and I know it's easy to jump from one to the other sometimes when I'm thinking about it, but I appreciate keeping them in separate buckets.
Thank you for that. And I do want to mention, right now, capital projects were due today, and we'll be meeting with department heads, so you will get, a capital facility plan like I do every year with the graph, what has been presented, and then, you can look at it, and you're going to go through that and see if you want to move that to the finance committee, or if there's a project on there that you might want a tax rate increase. You'll have that bite at the apple, very, very soon, because that will be for the November town meeting. And what we're talking about now will be for the April town meeting, but it will give us direction, as you said, Madam Chair, at the strategic planning session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I know we're a little bit behind, but I think, these presentations were really important and needed the extra time. So we're discussion on possible lease of the pumping station road. And I'm going to keep you to your 10 minutes.
Okay. Excellent. So as I mentioned, what I wanted to bring to the board tonight is a question about whether the select board wants us to move forward with a competitive lease process. So I'm just showing you an aerial, and maybe I can zoom in on that so that, before I zoom in, this is Palmer Ave here, if you can see my cursor. And then here's Pumping Station Road. There are a couple of buildings and a paved parking lot. It was used as an office and a garage by the water department. And then this is a cleared site that was used for storage, but does not have any structures on it. So those are the two parcels that we're talking about. And we have had two parties come forward, one specifically interested in this parcel, which is the 300 committee, and I see Jessica Rittenauer here tonight, although I'm going to ask the board not to invite her up to elaborate on her proposal, and that's because we have a little bit of a delicate dance to do in that if the town wants to move forward with potentially leasing this property, we have to go through a competitive process. So we don't want to, in reality or in perception, give anyone the idea that there's only one potential lessee involved. We will truly advertise and solicit proposals from any and all comers who fit the criteria that will be spelled out. So we don't have to take, proposals for all sorts of purposes with all sorts of structures. We can tailor it as, narrowly, as long as it is open and competitive and not geared toward one entity. So that being the case, I will just mention again briefly what the 300 committee has come forward with. You have a proposal in your packet, and generally it relates to a potential headquarters. There is a connection there because This is abutting a vast open space, some of which was acquired with the assistance of the 300 Committee. I believe they either own some of that land or they hold the conservation restriction on some of that land. Be that as it may, the other potential interested party that I mentioned is the Falmouth Bike Lab. Now, they didn't specifically ask about this property, but they came forward and generally said they were looking for a new home, they were looking for a garage space, so this was the one parcel that really sort of jumped to mind that might have potential for the Falmouth Bike Lab as well. And that's a nonprofit entity that donates bikes to seasonal workers and others in the Cape area, in the town of Falmouth. Some other notes, you have a detailed memo in your packet. I'm not going to go through all of those details. This does abut the property that is the surface water supply for the town, so it's, although my understanding is that the groundwater flows away from the surface water and not toward it from this site, it is certainly a sensitive area. One of the issues that I do want to emphasize for the public as well as the board is access. So this is during these months, during the summer months, there's a gate on Pumping Station Road that we close so that folks cannot drive up and park in this area and access Goodwill Park that way, because we have overcrowding issues at Goodwill Park, and we saw it again pretty acutely over the July 4th weekend. So we have a real concern from the police department, park department, beach department about maintaining some control of that access during the summer months. So that's an issue that we're going to, that may limit the type of uses that we want to have at this site, and one that, we would want to go through in detail with any potential lessee. Let's see, what else do we want to say? So one of the sites is municipal use, one of them is residential B. I think we would be looking at low-intensity development given the proximity. The other issue that I did want to mention is access from a vehicle standpoint, just in terms of safety. I think you probably are all aware that, taking a left-hand turn onto Palmer Ave from Trotting Park Road there would be a challenge, and even from Palmer Ave onto Trotting Park. Onto Pumping Station Road. Thank you. I don't know why I want to call it Trotting Park. Thank you, Pumping Station Road. So that's another consideration that I think may cause you to want to limit the number of, the type of use and the intensity of the development there. So with that, I'm going to sit down and entertain your questions.
Any questions from the board? Go ahead.
Could you talk just briefly about what the RFP process would entail for the board and staff time and for the applicant?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question. So there is a lot of staff time that goes into constructing a request for proposals for real estate, because under the Chapter 30B, Section 16, which is the specific real estate section, we need to identify what are the criteria that we're going to use to determine what is the most favorable or more favorable proposal. Price can be a consideration, so in this case, rent to be charged by the town to the lessee, but it does not have to be the only or even the prevailing, the primary factor in awarding a lease. And in a case like this, you probably would not, you may or may not want to consider price as a significant or let me start again. You probably would want to include price as a consideration, but you probably would want to allow the other non-price criteria to have significant weight as well. So crafting that, and also, so there are minimum requirements, and then there are the competitive criteria. So the minimum requirements in this case are going to be very important. We want to screen out from the beginning any uses that we think are really going to be detrimental to the town's interests, for our benefit and the benefit of potential lessees. If we don't want to see, a large-scale retail there and all of the traffic that would result, we want to clearly articulate that in the request for proposals. So there's a fair amount of staff time, and then there is a dialogue with the board as well, because on the staff side, we will draft minimum requirements, and we'll draft what I think you might want to consider for competitive requirements, but there would be at least one meeting, maybe two, where we have a bit of a dialogue about what you want to look for in a lease.
Are there any other reasons not to do it, not to put it out for an RFP? I'm sorry, and then Mr. Patterson?
So, I think we want to have a really clear understanding of any water impacts. I think they are surmountable. I don't think they're substantial for a low-intensity office use that, we're not talking about a large flow. And there is a water protection district that I've referenced in your packet, and you see the map. It encompasses most of these two parcels, but not all of it. So I think there's actually one scenario would be to locate a septic that's outside of the water protection district, just to put that issue to rest. I think I think there's a real argument to be made that and the access to Gru's Pond and the overcrowding and the vehicle challenges, I think you might look at those and conclude we don't want to go there. But I'm not ready. That's not my recommendation. It's not a black and white issue, but I think that those would be the two issues. It would be, how concerned are we about crowd control, and are we comfortable that vehicles can get in and out of there? It's a state highway, so putting in a signal is a long, expensive road with a lot of staff time required to get there. So I think those would be the two issues. If you were going to say, no, let's not do it, it might be those two issues and/or the amount of time that it's going to take to work through those issues.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Patterson, and then Mr. Zelinski.
I know that, when we did the affordable housing project on Spring Bars Road, we basically had a consultant come in and kind of do the procurement backbone for that acquisition. Do we not have resources like that? I mean, I'm very conscious of the demands on our current staff. Can we not bring in a consultant to actually handle that procurement process? And we still have to establish all the parameters and the priorities and the restrictions. But is that an option, given the market? And I don't have a feel for anything beyond the affordable housing market.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting suggestion. We certainly could. It would be, the cost would be less than the Little Pond Place, because that was a much larger affordable housing, much more complicated. Right. So that's something I could look at, and whether or not that would require additional funding, or if it's something that we might be able to find some money within the existing budget. But yeah, we could look at it that way. I would say, again, this project would be simpler than Little Pond, simpler than Tony Andrews Farm, which we really did in-house. It was a joint effort between Town Council's office and myself. But it did take a lot of time for Town Council and myself in the case of Tony Andrews Farm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, forgive me my ignorance on this part of this, but do I remember this property being abated at one point for some kind of hazmat?
So there was, Peter McConerty is here because he's always here. And he can speak on this in more detail, but there was some asbestos pipe that was, I believe that's correct. I believe that's exactly where it was, the more northeastern parcel there. But I believe it's been addressed. I don't think there's any remaining contamination issues in the soil that would be of concern.
Yes, that's correct. What had happened is when the water department was there, in the bays, they stored some asbestos pipe inside the bays, and we had some asbestos pipes from the construction projects. That's all been taken care of and abated. So
we have a 21E on that would go
several years ago. No, it's abated. The site is clean. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, Mr. Brown, we'll take one more because we're over time.
One last concern. I'm sure it goes through the regular process, but it's really an old building, and you probably got to make sure that it's checked for lead paint and remediated on that as well.
Thank you. Yep.
It's a historic site, too, is it not?
It is in a historic district. The buildings are not necessarily historic, but we would have to go through Mass Historic Commission, and we would want to engage the Town of Falmouth Historical Commission as well.
I think they would
All right.
qualify.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. I will read the items on the consent agenda. If anybody would like to hold for discussion, please just signal and we'll hold it. Approve Eversource petition for permission to install Sipawissett Road, Falmouth 1 new handhole at the base of the existing pole 637 and approximately 40 feet of conduit and cable under Town Road, northwesterly starting at new handle hole 637. The work is to be done to provide new electric service to 141 Sipawissett Road, Falmouth. Approve Eversource petition for permission to install in Scranton Ave, Falmouth 1 new FO pole to be labeled 89A/1.5, approximately 50 feet, south of existing pole 89A1. The work is to be done to provide electric service to 763 Main Street, Falmouth. Vote to extend memorandum of understanding with Friends of Falmouth Dogs. Approve request from the Wacoy Congregational Church for a waiver of the special events permit fee for the temporary one-way street permit for Parsons Lane for the annual summer bazaar on Friday, 7/15/22, and Saturday, 7/16/22, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Approve request for variance to sign code 184-20 Spore Garden Trust, off-premise sandwich board-style promotional signs, 8/1/22 through 8/6/22 for the Butterfly Garden Day. Approve letter to the Massachusetts legislator in support of Governor's 200 million, excuse me, budget proposal for the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust to fund water pollution abatement projects on Cape Cod and the islands. So hearing no holds.
I move approval on all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh.
Just thank Eric Turkington for drafting this letter supporting the $200 million earmark to the legislature, so.
And also, Sam, for you pushing it to get on this agenda for approval, because it's time sensitive.
It is,
So-
because they're in the sausage making right now.
Yes. Okay, review and vote to approve minutes, public session, July 6, 2022, July 13, 2022, July 21, 2022.
I have some comments.
I have lots of edits I'll start with the June 6th. Again, it would be nice if we had somebody else taking a look at these, and if we can arrange to contract that out, I think it would be terrific. Most of these edits, I don't think are significant changes. They're just typos and what have you. I'll take one on page 2 under Zoning Board of Appeals. Patterson motion to appoint to a term ending 6/30/2027. I don't think it's 2027. I think it was 2025. There's just things like that.
Also in that one, that's page 2, number E. It
Yep.
says, in response to Mr. Brown's question, I'm pretty sure that was Mr. Zelinski's question about the open meeting law to Mr. Patamus.
Yes.
Correct.
It
But
was.
I would just make a general comment, these are historical records, and I hate to see stuff go through that just has a lot of typos and things like that.
And if-
It's an image of the town, and we should be able to do a little bit better on some of these things. I mean, look at 8 pages that have different typo things, types of edits that need to be done. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Do you want us to take those, Mr.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Patterson?
pass them on because I don't think they're
make a
significant
comment
in
on
terms of meaning.
Table those, right?
Yeah, maybe we can consolidate those. The same thing is true for the minutes of June 13th. We've got 7 pages, all have edits in them, but nothing dramatic. I don't think there's anything that's going to be an issue of interpretation.
Oh, one more. All right, Mr. Patterson,
So let's hold these then?
I
You wanna
think we'll
do that?
hold, yes, I think we should go ahead and hold June 6th and June 13th.
Okay.
And I had a comment on page 10, the third paragraph from the bottom,
Which date, Mr. Brown?
June 6th.
Okay.
the whole second half of that paragraph is just, I can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
So it needs more than a typo. It's just.
Agreed.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I'm-
the substance is not there.
Right.
I agree.
And I'm looking at the June 21st, and I have the same issues, you know, it's not as long, but 3 out of the 4 pages, and one of the pages, I've got at least 10 edits, just grammatical kinds of, or, you know, technical, or,
I'm adding my edits to Sam's.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
I don't know, I just would like to see some things come through a little cleaner in the future.
I'm going to send you an email about an executive session minutes, just to clarify. I think there was something that was missed, but
Did we have any
I won't state it here.
Okay.
No, did we have any executive
No.
session minutes?
Oh, it was regarding, excuse me, it wasn't executive session, it was regarding the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
All
I
right,
suppose
so
since
I
it's
don't
open meeting, I could comment on it.
I don't know how we want to handle this, I mean,
I'll send you an email and you can decide if it's appropriate.
I don't want to keep going over these things, you know, so
Yes.
I'm a little worried about, can we just simply say as edited, and then you can take and integrate all of our edits into them?
Yeah,
Or somebody can?
I'm hearing that the quality of the minutes is not adequate, and I think, so there, we have a recording secretary, and then Diane Davidson in our office does review them, but I think we have placed perhaps too much emphasis on speed and not enough on a careful review. So I'm going to ask that, I'm going to work with Diane to make sure that we take the time needed. It may mean that, it takes a couple more weeks, but I want to make sure, and, she's sometimes been reviewing them on a Saturday to make sure that, we get them and we can act on them in time. And it's not working. So I'll look at the whole thing. And I'm clearly hearing the quality of the minutes is not good enough and we need to do better, and I will make that happen.
Well, there was a lot of catch-up, so it's understandable
was.
that it was,
Yep, indeed.
difficult to
Yep.
get caught up, and I appreciate that it's almost caught up, so there is a plus.
Right, but then the downside is we're not accepting of the.
I know, it makes it
So,
difficult.
It is, it's hard.
But, and I have to say that when I was reviewing all kinds of proposals and systems manuals, and I could never catch my own, errors.
Right.
It really takes a second party, third party, to go through and pick up on the things that your mind just
Right.
brushes over these things. And so I don't want to be critical of the person that's generating these. So this is just a process, and I think we just need to beef it up.
So, Madam Chair, would you be looking for a motion to table all of the minutes described tonight, to go back to the acting town manager for review?
To have them looked
and
at.
corrections?
Yes.
I'd make that motion.
Here's the last one.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the minutes until they're reviewed again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, town manager's supplemental report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I attended a meeting that was held with Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection officials to discuss the DEP's proposed amendments to Title V septic regulations. And I want to note that meeting was organized by Amy Lowell and Eric Turkington as chair of the Water Quality Management Committee. Also worked with Amy on preparing for that meeting. They had a presentation prepared, so it wasn't just sort of an off-the-cuff chat about the proposed regulations. This is a big deal. Remember, it was mentioned. I mentioned it briefly earlier in a previous report. A big deal if it actually happens. These are regulations, and they're proposing to incorporate, there's a really important good intent behind this change in regulations, which is to start enforcing nitrogen protection as part of the Title V septic regulations. To this point, that has not been a part of Title V septic regulations. It's really been sanitary. The focus has been sanitary, not nitrogen, not water quality. So the proposal has, certainly a good intent behind it to try to put some teeth into getting municipalities to remove the nitrogen and clean up the waterways. Of course, how that's done is very important in terms of the timing and the cost implications for the town. So I just want to report that it was a great dialogue. I felt like the town was very well represented, and I felt like we were listened to. We'll see what the regulations that they ultimately adopt look like.
Can I just ask a question? I mentioned that I attended a pond, the Oyster Pond community, about looking at sewering their area to start the remediation of nitrogen infusion at the Oyster Pond. I mean, if you take a look at the investment that each property would have to put into nitrogen-reducing septic systems, it's almost cheaper to do it as a community. And then the whole enforcement and monitoring goes away because now the town is taking responsibility for all of that. I mean, it's a complicated picture, and I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that it may very well be less expensive for each property owner to pay for the betterment costs to put in sewer. And I think that is the way it's going to work out. If you take a look at what we've done already in Little Pond Sewer Service Area and what we're talking about and expanding further east, it's going to be less money for people to pay the betterment, to have the town take care of the sewage treatment, if you will, do the collection and everything else. And they don't have to worry about it after that. Even the people with the lift pumps, the grinder pumps, I mean, they don't have to worry about that since we've already incorporated the maintenance and even the pumping when there's a power failure into the plan. So I just think we're going to get a much better product if we look at the bigger picture and think about sewering rather than requiring denitrifying septic systems that each property owner is going to be responsible for managing and certifying.
So the proposed regulation does allow the towns an option to adopt a watershed plan, which could be addressed with sewering. July 4th weekend was very busy. Generally, it went quite well, with the one exception that I mentioned earlier, that Goodwill Park was really pretty badly overcrowded. There were cars parked all over the place. The Lawrence Lynch lot was full. There were cars parked in the cemetery. There were cars parked at Trotting Park. So that was definitely a challenge that we had better success in recent years with the new measures we put in place, with locking the gate and marking the more prominent signs and ticketing. But even with all of that, for some reason this year it was a bigger problem again. Otherwise, July 4th went very well. I also want to mention a couple. It's been a few weeks since I've mentioned anything about our staffing issues, hiring, vacancies, and new hires. So some new vacancies of the past month. There was a building inspector has gone to work for another community closer to home. Assistant library director left to take a director position. Head of circulation at the library retired. So those are some of the more significant new vacancies of the past month. I do have some good news to report on the hiring front. We have hired an assistant town planner from within. We've hired 2 dispatchers, which are badly needed. A health inspector has been hired, and that, again, was a promotion from within. And we have hired an MES supervisor, a Marine Environmental Services supervisor. And lastly, your next meeting is July 25th. You have meetings August 8th and August 22nd. And in conversation with the chair and the vice chair, we are planning 3 Saturday sessions to continue the strategic planning process. And those are August 27th, September 10th, and October 1st. That concludes my report.
Thank you. And thank you for those updates. I think it's really important to hear those personnel updates. That sort of keeps the board informed, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate not having to ask for it.
Yes.
It's also comforting.
Select board reports?
I'll just say I mentioned it earlier, but I enjoyed the staff appreciation event today. It was very nice to see people being recognized and supportive of each other, so that was really nice. And I have registered for the One Cape Summit in August, so knock on wood, nothing happens with my students, and I will be able to attend both days.
I think I ended up, because I called and and got confirmation today. I think I got the second town-paid, or the one that the Cape Cod Commission allows free. I must have gotten my reservation right in after you. They didn't send me an acknowledgement but I did call to check on it, and they have me registered, and they said, oh, you're, whatever they call it.
Great.
You're
You're
the
approved.
comped. And I'm under the one allocation for the town. It just means that we don't separate, we don't submit it as a trip report. I mean, we're all gonna be covered. It's just a question of going through the paperwork.
Right. Any other reports?
Madam Chair, I was warmly welcomed by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee this week via Zoom. I made the statement that I would do a lot more listening than speaking at that meeting, so I'm intaking all of that information and getting to know that committee. And I just wanted to acknowledge their hospitality towards me, and I look forward to working with them.
Awesome.
I do have a list of things I can run down real quick.
Just give you a quick one.
Just attended 2 Eagle Scouts, one of them you met tonight, the other one was from Troop 40, Ned Haywood. Celebrated the 4th with a community picnic, and went to Courtney Bird's tribute party to his wife. Was just quite the occasion. It's what she wanted, you know. Was one of Courtney's typical parties. It was a lot of fun, but enjoyed that. I zoomed in on the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association board meeting. I'm on that board. They're laying out plans for the meeting. There's going to be a meeting actually at the Cape Open Cape Summit on the April, I've forgotten whether it's August 1st or August 2nd. It'll be a morning breakfast meeting, so everybody's invited to come to that. They usually bring in somebody, particularly from MMA, to speak about bigger state pictures, state issues that we should be keeping in mind. But that's coming up. Let's see. If anybody's interested in carpooling to that event on either day, I'm going to be happy to participate in that. You can drive or I'll drive, it doesn't matter. I participated in the Rotary Day of Play, I mentioned that, and then also the triathlon that took place. Both events this past weekend went off very smoothly. So, and my compliments to the police. They had a police presence in both cases. So, you know, our concerns about all of these shootings that we hear around the country. It's helpful to know that, you know, there's at least the image that there's a police there to intervene should anybody want to do something nefarious. And then I think it's important that we be aware of the continuing COVID breakthroughs that are going on. My hat's off to Scott McGann for his reports on a weekly basis. And it's nice to know that, you know, our hospitalization rates have not gone up significantly, nor the number of deaths, and that I think we can attribute that to the high level of vaccination that we have in this community, and the care that we all take toward trying to protect each other. It's a community responsibility that I see here in Falmouth in so many ways. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Brown?
I wanted to remind you about the email that we got from the Waterways Committee Chair. That was very well planned and thoughtful, but it's going to be a big project, so I just wanted to remind you about it, that if you didn't get a chance to really look at that email carefully, take another look and start to get your head around that project, because that navigable waterway by the, this is out by the, what's the name of it? Forget the name of that, Minot Yacht Club?
Yacht Club. Yeah.
You really can't even get past there anymore. It's very dangerous. And so something really needs to be done there, and there's 3 options that they're going to be weighing, whether or not it's just dredging or if there's some sort of revetment that could be made. So they're going to come back to their next meeting next month and put out their ideas and see what they come up with, and they're going to send that to us, and we'll have to, you know, decide if we can support that, or, you know, how we're going to fund it, if the, you know, coastal zone management will help us. I don't know.
Can I just suggest that you need to go to the Conservation Commission also?
Oh, yeah.
Before you come to us, because, you know,
Oh,
they're going to have, you know, a veto authority over whatever happens there. So they need to be part of the team before they bring it to us.
But you got to decide which of the 3 strategies is preferred, and then bring it to them to propose.
Right.
Well, you better find out whether they're going to even consider it. That's my point.
Well, they'll have to know what they're considering.
Right, ahead of time. Okay, any other reports from select board members? Okay, discussion of future agenda items.
I have a couple that we touched on previously that Peter had said the coastal resiliency, we were going to be revisiting that soon, so that's just one, but I'll defer to when Peter feels like he's got something to bring to us. I'd like to have another policy discussion. You know, there's a few more policies that I'd like to have, you know, defined that are in writing. Some have to do with staff, you know, select board interaction with department heads, for instance. There's a employee public statement policy. I think that would be a good thing to have, that employees should know whether or not they have a right to answer questions honestly in public, and if there's a limit to that. I don't know if that's a role for us, but I'd just like to talk about it at least. So there's a few policies that I'd like to talk about. And then we touched on it tonight, the Proposition 2.5 permanent override, the possibility of that. The one is another project that I'm kind of dreaming up, is that potential sewer expansion in East Falmouth. The Water Quality Management Committee is really not, you know, their job. Their job is to make sure that the estuaries are repaired. A sewer main down East Falmouth Main Street to provide higher density affordable housing is not really their mission. So I'd like to try to convince this board to take that on if you feel like you're interested to discuss it. And if we can come to agreement that it would be a good thing to do, then we would seek funding from out of town. You know, maybe it would be some kind of affordable housing funding, coastal resiliency funding, sewer infrastructure. I mean, there's got to be some kind of state grants. We can apply to the county for the money to do the design of it, you know, with the ARPA funding. It's infrastructure. So I'd like to have that for an agenda item at some point.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Brown?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay.
You mentioned one other for consideration. I actually just had a conversation with Bob Muscali, who's our Cape Cod Commission representative. And he was telling me that the feedback he's gotten from informally is that Falmouth doesn't take advantage of the resources that the Cape Cod Commission offers. That's the feedback he was given. And I think it's probably a valuable thing for us to take a look at that and say, are we tapping the resources of the Cape Cod Commission the way we should? And I think there's a reason why that hasn't been, but I won't bring that up in open meeting discussions. Because when I first came on the board, there was an attempt to basically disassociate ourselves from the Cape Cod Commission, which I thought was, yeah.
I didn't say a word, Mr. Patterson. I was looking to understand what you were saying.
Anyway, didn't happen, fortunately. But I'd like to see, are we tapping into the resources of Cape Cod Commission to our benefit? And, you know, you mentioned the affordable housing issues. Well, they've already looked at where they think that the town should be focusing to increase density to provide affordable housing. And so they've already done some master planning that we could tap into. There's just one example.
Mm-hmm. And the only other thing that I would add is at some point, I want to make sure, and this doesn't have to be right now, but we go back to the 3 reports, the oral report from, that Allison Leshen did for the Transportation Committee, her letter of resignation, and then the Transportation Committee report. And that can happen later, but I want to take a look at those recommendations that were previously approved and not implemented. Anything else, Mr. Zelinski? I'm just going to ask that everyone sign the proclamations before you leave. And I apologize for keeping you 20 minutes over, but I think we had a lot of important work and certainly presentations. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.